So what do we do? Best thing to do is separate it. Internal versus external. External conflict is tactical. Like, how do I get from point A to point B? How do I have a difficult conversation? How do I structure a book? How do I do a goal? Whatever it is, right? Tactical things. Internal conflict is what is stopping you. A whole complete human being from doing the thing.
You're listening to Writer Unblocked, the podcast for serious authors who are ready to scale their careers with smart strategy. I'm Nicole, your host, and I help authors navigate publishing, marketing, and multi-format expansion, all while keeping the vibe high. I want to start off by asking you a question that I've actually never asked you, even though we've known each other for a bit, which is, how did you get into conflict resolution coaching?
Well, it's a really long story, but to cut it short, I was on a train somewhere going to New York for an interview. I was like in my early 20s, and I ended up talking to this guy. He must have been in his 50s at this point. We're still friends to this day. And I was thinking about becoming a lawyer because I like contract law, and but I didn't want to make the commitment. I knew it wasn't for me. I was traveling a lot, and he said, "Well, why not a master's in legal studies?" Years later, I did it. And I mediated in the courts. I mediated for, all sorts of stuff, right? It was a very interesting time in my life. And then eventually stopped working, had kids, built an animal hospital, became a coach. And I was sitting at one of the ICF meetings, and they made us introduce ourselves, which I was like, oh, geez. They're like, well, what's your brand? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm a conflict resolution coach. And it came to me in that moment that I would marry my two loves, conflict and coaching. So
I love that. I love that because aside from the conflict resolution, which people assume is an external thing, and we'll get to this in your book in a second, there's just so much more conflict, at least for me, internally, more than anything else. And learning how to deal with yourself, I think, is really, really important. What I love about Dana's story is it's not linear. Her path to authorship, like so many of you, started with curiosity and a little boredom. Listen to why she started writing a book at this juncture in her life.
The real answer? I was bored.
I love that. I love the honesty. Okay. Talk to me more about that.
So I'm coaching someone, and I was doing the pillars exercise, and she says, is that written anywhere? Like, can I look at that? And I'm like, no, I just do this exercise. And I don't know, a few weeks later, I was on the phone with one of the Rutgers coaching, and we were doing some reciprocal coaching, and I was a little bit restless, and I was like, oh, I really need to do something. Like I'm going too wide and not deep enough. And my creative side needed something. I said, maybe I'll just write a book.
It's a meaty book, and you can see mine's already pretty battered because I've gone and I've jumped around. And when I see you, I'll get you to sign my copy. But listen, that's a great reason to write a book. And I think that someone like you with this vast knowledge and framework to share should write a book.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I do slide decks. So my book started out as a slide deck, literally. And I had memes. So I had a meme on the slide, and then underneath in the notes section, I would write like all my thoughts. And I had 200 slides. And eventually I had to move it to a Word document because that's not how people edit.
Right.
So it was a very long and interesting process backwards. No outline, no nothing. I just dove in and started writing.
How does that internal push and pull in particular do you think affects authors in that creative endeavor of writing a book?
Well, it stops them. I mean, it makes them better in one sense because you can get really great creative ideas out of it. But if you're stopped too much, I think it promotes stagnation. You can't think clearly because there's too much like thought clutter in your head.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to clear out the clutter of your thoughts and then allow the creativity to flow. So it really depends on the kind of conflict that you're dealing with.
Well, there's a quote in here, and I bookmarked it because I wanted to go back to it, and it was, there are doing goals and being goals.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that line hit me so hard, doing goals versus being goals. Because when we hit resistance, it's often not about the to do list, it's about the identity underneath it. And this really, really resonated with me. So then we get into her framework, which is really exciting. And she explains a little bit about how it came together.
Well, the framework just came over iteration. I mean, I just kept thinking and thinking, and then I would be moving, first of all, when I was moving slides around, but eventually it took shape because it started to make sense in my own head. I would pay attention to my thinking. I was like, oh, this came up. And then I'm like, oh, let me think about how I thought about it. And then I would have to redo my thinking and say, okay, this is how I felt, or this is where my thought is. And then these are the thoughts that are fighting. So eventually the roadmap came out because I was just paying attention to how I was functioning. And then I would coach people, and it was the same thing. We all operate with the same kind of frameworks. Um, so that's how the roadmap came about. So it was thinking one step at a time, slowing it down, speeding it up, and then getting a lot of people to look at the work and say, no, this doesn't make any sense, Dan. I'm like, what are you doing with this? And then I'm like, oh, they're right. This thing should go here. And then I would move everything around. So it was a lot of shuffling of the deck.
Interesting. And did you have to apply any of these things as an author?
Meaning what?
Like, did you have those moments during the journey to write, going through the writing process and then the publishing? What were you feeling and how were you dealing with those feelings or did you just breeze through it? Because some people do. Like, I just wrote this and it was great.
I literally was just having fun. I actually wasn't even planning on having a book. So I'm like, I'm just having fun writing. And then I realized I write backwards. I'd have the back of the sentence where it should be the front of, like, my English is horrible. So, it was a learning process. I was just having a good time. There wasn't pressure that I put on myself, except towards the end. Like last year was pretty tough because I wanted to get this done. So it was a lot of pushing it forward. But no, I didn't worry about it. I just trusted myself and dove in. So hopefully it's good.
This is where Donna introduces one of my favorite tools from her book, the concept of your who, that deeper, unshakable version of yourself that you can always, always return to. So talk to me about who's the who? What's the who?
Right. So these are your challenges, right? And every day we overcome challenges. Thoughts on top of a challenge makes it a conflict. More thoughts, more thoughts, more thoughts. You're building a very large mountain of conflict. So what do we do? Best thing to do is separate it. Internal versus external. External conflict is tactical. Like, how do I get from point A to point B? How do I have a difficult conversation? How do I structure a book? How do I do a goal? Whatever it is, right? Tactical things. Internal conflict is what is stopping you. A whole complete human being from doing the thing. Now, it's definitely your thoughts that are getting in the way because every day you overcome challenges just by figuring it out, right? But why in this particular instance is this thing a conflict? It could be high stakes conversation. It could be confidence. It could be many options, but the idea is it's internal. But I take it a step further. So you have everything is internal, external. So you have an external identity and an internal identity. Externally, I'll give you my external, is wife, mother, daughter, worker of some sort, now author, brown hair going white, external stuff. Internally, who I am is community, passion, laughter, and peace. And if you take away all the stuff that's not me, those are the 4 words that just are very me. And I'll use those as jackets to say, okay, what would community Dana say to herself? Or what would peaceful Dana say in this situation? Because right thing, like the outside stuff is swirling, right? So what would peace Dana say? How would laughter Dana break through an impasse? So you're always going with the grain of your natural self. The idea is wherever you go, you bring yourself along. And if you work with your grain, you'll never fall short. I mean, even if the outside stuff doesn't work back, you're not going to kick yourself by saying, oh, I should have handled this better. Right. So you don't have that internal judgment because you're still in alignment with yourself. That's the being goal.
I love that because this and again, this is a visual if you're watching, and I'll put this in a clip for social. That visual you gave of like, this is the challenge, right? I want to write a book, or I'm trying to publish a book, or I want to sell more copies of my book. It's hard enough. Like, here it is. And when you do this visual of like, here's your thought, and here's your other thought, and here's your other thought, it just makes me realize how much, even in my own challenge, which is not related to authorship, I'm the challenge, right? I can't do the thing because I'm preventing myself from doing the thing. No one is preventing me from doing the thing. That's why I tell authors, in a world where you can self-publish, in a world where you don't need a publisher and an agent to be like, yes, 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 you're good enough, we're going to publish you. The only thing stopping you from writing and publishing your book is you.
Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah.
There's no other barrier. And God, these evil thoughts. These evil thoughts.
But sometimes the evil thoughts kick you into a certain motivation to say, you know what, I think I'm going to overcome this. Or maybe I'll get an idea from the evil thoughts and see what they're all saying, right? Everyone has a voice at the table. You hand the microphone to the bad guys, the good guys, the whomever, and you listen. You don't want to discount them because they're just going to get louder.
Okay, deep breath, because what comes next is personal. I shared something I was struggling with, and Dana gently coached me through it. Here's that moment, that conversation unlocked something for me. And if you've ever dealt with criticism or doubted your work, I hope it unlocks something for you too. Interesting. So let's talk about that. So I'm having a negative thought, like my podcast is going to go nowhere. This is taking up so much of my time. Why am I doing this? Mm-hmm. And the more I try to suppress that and just be like, no, like book more interviews. You can like, this is, you go. What does a conversation with that inner critic look like?
Yeah. So I'll look at it as the negotiation. So you have interest versus position. So the position is the inner critic is saying, can't do this. What are the hopes, dreams, and fears underneath? What's happening? Is it realistic? Is it a perception? And if it is realistic, how much is realistic? How much is perception? And then do you have a plan B for if it is realistic? But the inner critic is probably telling you something. So the more you resist, the more it persists. So give it the microphone and then say, okay, I hear you. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you don't want.
You're right. And because for me, in that example, the fear underneath the criticism is no one's going to listen, or people will listen and find it awful.
Okay, so go there. So what if no one listens? What happens?
Nothing, really. I mean, it's sad because I want people to listen, but nothing catastrophic happens if nobody listens.
Yeah. Do you figure out another way to do it better?
Yes.
There you go. What if they listen and don't like it?
I think that's feedback, because that's what I tell my clients, right? There's feedback in a beta reader telling you what they didn't like about a book, about your draft, right? Or an editor telling you feedback. Like even a bad review on your book potentially is feedback.
Yeah.
It's valuable data.
Yeah, it's all data. Even the critic has data.
Even the critic has data. Maybe that should have been, that's the title for your next. Even the critic has data. Even the critic has data. And I want to go back to what you said about having fun, because that's one of my values. And I often think that my stress comes from when I'm not having fun. And I realize that when I'm not having fun, guess whose fault it is? It's mine. It's mine, because someone will always be able to find, someone could always find the fault with it, right? So like no book out there is going to have a perfect 5-star review. Not a single person in the world is going to say, I didn't like this book.
Yeah, but perfect to you is also not perfect to someone else, and vice versa. I mean, people put pineapple on pizza all the time. I have yet to try it, but
you haven't tried.
No, I have not tried it. But everyone's idea of perfect is different. And so if your idea of perfect is your idea, then that's good enough, right? It doesn't have to be this over the top. It just has to feel right for you.
So Dana tells me in her book that we have an average of about 60,000 thoughts per day, which is crazy. And we get into this conversation about, well, what do you do? Inevitably, there will be a clash, a values clash, because there's 60,000 things flying around in your head. And this is how she says we need to handle it.
That's what Dr. Google said. I looked it up and Dr. Google was like, it's 60,000. I'm like, I'm going with that then.
Oh my God, that sounds exhausting. Okay, so 60,000 a day. Is it something that you tackle first thing in the morning when you wake up?
Well, you're just always thinking. It's just, are your thoughts leading you to the direction that you want? Are you in alignment with yourself, or do you have a lot of thought clutter? And if you're indecisive, it might be two values hitting.
So what do you do? Because your values are important. So if you have two values that are in conflict,
Got to tell one to take a back seat. You got to look at the pros, the cons, the consequences. You're like, so I have an example in the book. We were going to South America, and the really long story short, the plane got delayed, and then it got rerouted because there is civil unrest in the country. And then they're like, well, you got to go back. And I'm like, let's just go through Colombia and we'll get there. It's a 24-hour extra on our flight. My family was not having anything to do with it. They're like, we're going home. And I'm like, so we've come this far just to go home. So my perseverance value was fighting my community pillar. I got the two of them, and like I can actually feel my brain freeze because I'm standing at the airport saying, do we push ahead and go to Colombia and I force them to get on the plane because perseverance is kind of loud? Or do I say, let's figure it out and give ourselves a moment? So I went with community and we went back home. So we got to Houston and then we flew back home, which I was not happy about. My emotions were not happy on the plane, but I chose with intention. So when we got back home, I ended up saying, okay, we're going back. We're just going to figure it out. We're going on vacation. And it worked out a lot better because that's how life works.
okay, so Dan and I had a really long conversation here, which I am not including through another personal challenge I was having. But the gist of it is to give you more context on the segment that will follow. It's about what makes me tick and what ticks me off. And she rightly observes that sometimes it's one and the same.
But the things that make you tick are the exact same words that make you ticked off. So your self-reliance value is the thing that's so wonderful about you. You could figure it out, you do it, you don't really need much of anything, right? But when people aren't self-reliant or when you have to be self-reliant, maybe that's the thing that ticks you off.
Yes, there's a dark side, right, to the self-reliance and all the other things because I'm also tired of doing it all myself.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what would letting go look like?
Asking for help, and it's funny that you should say that because God, for like a year I've resisted hiring an assistant because I'm like, no, I'll just do it myself, and they're not going to be able to do my newsletter the way I want, or help do this landing page the way I want, or help me set up my podcast system the way I want. And I hired help last month for the first time, like an actual full blown like person who's dedicated to just helping me. And they don't do everything exactly the same way I would, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay because it frees up my time to do the fun things and the things that really move my business forward.
Oh, you're building new muscles.
Yes. And it's funny because like in a way, all these things that you're making me realize right now are the things that I make my author clients realize, right? Like you have to hire an assistant, you have to hire an editor, you have to hire a book cover designer, you have like it's not just I coached a client that I think I was the only person she hired because everything was herself. And I think in the end it really hurt her book and the potential of the book because there was just there was no entry point for anybody else to come help with this with your baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And writing a book is an endeavor. It is exhausting. And it's not just writing the book. If only the authors just had to write the book, right? There's so much, as you know, involved in the promotion and the setting up of the Amazon page and the author page and the links and the promotions and the booking on podcasts and being a guest and promoting your work. And so it's a forever job too. If you're gonna promote this book forever, Dana, you're gonna be talking about this book. Even if you don't write another, this is the book you're gonna be talking about as an author. It's a job, right?
It is. And it's like you said, you're having fun with it, right? I'm building hopefully community with it where people can just realize how great they are and they can figure it out. And they've always been able to figure out. You've survived 100% of your life so far. Everything else is the challenge, right? You just get over the little hump and just do it as your best self. And that best self has carried you through every single thing. If you look back on everything in your life, those values, your pillars, that best self has always been next to you, getting you through it.
So I could see this for an author being valuable when they're going to sit down and write, to have that intentionality of, my best self is going to sit down and write this chapter, or the next 10,000 words.
Or the inner critic is, and it's going to be very spicy, and then you kind of get the best self going in, and then you can have that, it wouldn't be normal to not have that internal flux, right? I mean, it's just everyone has it. The inner critic definitely has a spot, and it needs a spot. And sometimes it's a warning signal to be like, oh, danger, don't do that. Or sometimes it's like, oh, I shouldn't have listened to that voice. But inner conflict is what makes the great stories.
Yes.
But sitting too long in it, maybe not so fantastic.
See, isn't that fantastic? I just love that. All that inner conflict is what makes a good story. And so we should not shy away from our own inner conflict, which the next segment, she's going to talk about this thought buffet, which I love, this concept of a puzzle made up of all your internal thoughts and how important it is to kind of bring them all out. And we get back to my struggle with my inner conflict about this podcast.
Exactly. It's like looking at a puzzle. So if you don't know what the puzzle pieces look like, you can't make a picture.
Right.
So all your thoughts are puzzle pieces. So keep getting more thoughts, keep changing the picture around. You can make all different pictures, right? But if you don't have all your puzzle pieces and you don't have all your thoughts in order to say, okay, there's a structure. These are the thoughts that are the good ones. These are the ones that are kicking my butt a little bit. But everyone needs to have a say to make the picture sustainable, because your emotions will tell you. You didn't grab all the thoughts because you still have a little thought in there trying to do something, like a bad thought that's undermining everything. So you have to pull all your thoughts out, put them on the table, and say, all right, what kind of picture do I want to make?
That's helpful to say, okay, I have this thought that's not so doesn't feel too good, but I have this thought. I'm fearful that no one's going to listen to this podcast, but I'm also excited about this, and this.
Yeah. Sometimes that single train of thought is the problem. So there's a chapter in the book, it's the create chapter, and there's all different exercises to add more thoughts. And it's almost like when you go to a restaurant, like you might spend more time looking at a menu to pick a meal than you do spending time looking at your thoughts, right? But think of only one thought. That's all you have. No one's listening, no one's listening, no one's listening. So you're digging your heel into this position of no one is listening. Create 3 other thoughts. Create a funny thought. Maybe everyone got shot up to the moon, or, whatever it is. Create a ridiculous thought, a funny thought, a sad thought, and just play and add more thoughts to the train of thoughts so that you have, and then see which ones feel like more reality. Maybe you don't have as many listeners as you want, and so you do an and. Can I have this thought and this thought? And marry 2 ideas together.
I am never going to look at negative self-talk the same way again. Speaking with Dana is always so refreshing. And here's a segment of our talk that you are going to love. And if you only listen to this, this is the only segment you have to listen to, okay? Because this food analogy for negative self-talk is going to change your life.
And the emotions, once you pinpoint the why you're upset, like which thought did it hit? Was it a value, or was it, was I acting as a shell of myself? Or did I get the demoralized trigger that's like yelling and screaming? Once you can pinpoint the what, you could choose okay, now I understand why. And then it kind of takes the air out of the balloon. So let me do this one little exercise with you, because I know So what is your favorite food of all time?
Oh my God. It's got to be some sort of Dominican food. So usually my go-to is some sort of rice, beans, and chicken or something, like my mom's chicken.
Okay. What food do you absolutely hate? Like you're going to almost throw up if you have it.
Shrimp.
Okay. So every time you have all these thoughts running amok in your head, like saying, oh, blah, 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 negative, 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 you're eating a very large bowl of shrimp on purpose.
That's so
the prawns. There was like, yeah. Because you can eat the rice, beans, chicken from mom all day long. And even if it's like a 1% that you're eating it, it's better than eating the shrimp.
God. And now every time I have a negative thought, I'm going to think about that and you're going to make me hurl and I'm going to immediately stop thinking that.
The food you fill your stomach with is no different than the thoughts you fill your head with. It's the thought that's making you have an emotion. Like, oh my God, I was attacked. They threw all sorts of stuff in my way, right? They just did what they did. You added the interpretation.
Yeah.
I mean, so many times in my life, I've had, this person or that person throw these bombs, right? Quote unquote bombs. I ended up in fantastic spots because of it. I would have never been a coach had it not been for this, or I would have never done a this if it had not been for this other person just like sticking the screws to me, right? And I don't look at it as sticking the screws anymore, like I did in the beginning.
Right.
But now I'm like, I got to send that person a thank you note.
Yeah, and I think that's like the real secret to resilience, right? It's easy to say resilience, which I talked about in another episode, but I think what's underneath a person who can be resilient is these things that you're describing in your book.
Yeah.
That's what makes you resilient. That's the how. Like here is the manual of how you become a resilient person, a resilient author, a resilient mom. There was one more thing that you said. I love this so much. Again, I'm such a goal-oriented person, so these are the ones that resonate with me. But you wrote, we achieve goals when we prioritize what we spend time thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. The things you think about determine the things you think about.
And then what you end up doing, it's sort of like why I love my vision board. It's a very visual thing in my face every day that I put the most outrageous things on this board. I don't care because I want them in my face. I want to be thinking about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to flip it back to the being goals, what if, and we'll do your who exercise, whenever you're ready, but what if you had your who always front and center and that person was leading the charge? It's your thoughts that make it a struggle. You could listen, I could drive in Europe. You could do this thing that you're about to do. Nothing is a struggle unless you think it is. Your thoughts make it impossible or easy.
Right.
You just get to choose which one you're doing. Both paths are going to be difficult, right? There are going to be impediments along the way. There's going to be this, that, and the other. But you get to choose your heart. You get to choose which thing is going to be giving you the biggest payoff.
Well, I'm honored that you made time to have this conversation with me, and I absolutely will. Let's book a part 2 because this is really, really important work. Everybody should be reading this book. Again, I'm going to link it in the show notes. And I always like to close out my episodes with one question for my guests, which is, what do you want to be true 12 months from now?
People would live clean between their ears. I mean, really, it's incredible what we do to ourselves. And if we could just be kinder to ourselves, like inside, outside, right? Whatever your pillars are, like your kindness or service, whatever your outside pillars are, face them inwards.
Yeah. I think that's a really good message, Anna. Thank you so, so much. And everyone stay tuned because we're going to do the who exercise that comes from the book. And if this episode doesn't prompt you to buy the book, that exercise demonstration absolutely will, because this is not my first coaching session with her. She has been an amazing, amazing coach. And thank you for all your generosity. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me this week. For more information on today's episode, please check out the show notes or go to writerunblockedpodcast.com. Before we wrap up, if today's episode sparked ideas for your author career, don't let them sit in your head. Take action. If you are ready for high impact support, I offer one-on-one strategy sessions to help authors like you navigate your author business with precision. Head to reignitewithnicole.com to book a session or apply for any of my author programs. And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with a fellow writer and leave a review. Thanks for listening to Writer Unblocked, and I will see you next time.